You wake up in the Pacific Northwest expecting a typical rainy winter morning, only to discover that your entire world has been swallowed by water. Interstate 5, America's busiest and most vital north-south highway, has vanished beneath a fast-moving, debris-choked brown river. Firefighters, symbols of ground-level response, are no longer driving trucks. They're paddling inflatable kayaks between stranded cars, racing against a relentless current to reach people trapped by rapidly rising floodwaters. Entire neighborhoods sit isolated, transformed into temporary islands. Giant trees, ripped from their ancient roots by the storm's furious force, rocket down overflowing rivers, slamming into bridges with terrifying power across both Oregon and Washington, each impact echoing a deeper structural threat. Families climb onto rooftops, desperate for a few extra feet of safety. Parents carry children through waist-deep, freezing water as rescue crews, stretched thin, battle against the clock. And the escalating water levels that surge higher than anything residents have witnessed in decades. The iconic Snoqualmie Falls roars, a deafening testament to the deluge at its highest flow since 2015. Further north, the Skagit River, a lifeblood for many communities, threatens to break its all-time record set in 1990, hinting at a potential catastrophe for vast stretches of farmland and small towns. And the chilling forecast from meteorologists. A second atmospheric river, equally powerful and laden with tropical moisture, is already on its relentless approach. This isn't merely heavy rain. This is a warm, moisture-loaded pineapple express, a direct, almost surgical strike from the Pacific, slamming into the Northwest like a fire hose. The unusual warmth is critical. It's melting mountain snowpack at elevations of 7,000 to 8,000 feet, transforming what should be benign snow accumulation into millions of gallons of liquid fury, unleashing catastrophic floods from the sprawling urban centers of Portland to Seattle. Homes are submerged, highways are collapsing, entire towns are cut off from civilization. And in this unfolding nightmare, the storm is only just getting started. Tonight, we dissect the harrowing moment the Pacific Northwest crossed from merely severe weather into a full-scale natural disaster. We explore the complex meteorological choreography behind this atmospheric river, a phenomenon that is, in real time, rewriting the region's history and challenging its very definition of winter. How, in a region accustomed to ceaseless rain, did it escalate so rapidly, so catastrophically? The roots of this unfolding disaster began far out over the vast, turbulent Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the coastline. There, an enormous stream of warm, moisture-rich air organized itself, forming a direct, colossal pipeline toward the Pacific Northwest. Meteorologists label it an atmospheric river, but this particular manifestation was far more intense, more anomalous than usual. This was a true pineapple express, carrying an almost unimaginable volume of tropical moisture from near the Hawaiian archipelago across more than 4,000 miles of open ocean, directly aimed at the vulnerable coasts of Oregon and Washington. This isn't just a weather event. It's a striking example of the amplified hydrological cycle, a pattern experts increasingly link to a warming planet, where the ocean acts as an inexhaustible reservoir fueling unprecedented deluges. The first wave of this aerial deluge made landfall on December 8th, saturating Oregon's valleys and Washington's foothills, priming the landscape for what was to come. But the real, devastating blow arrived with the second, much stronger pulse, between December 9th and 11th. By then, the ground was beyond saturated. Rivers were already swollen to their banks. Creeks had burst their usual confines. The landscape had reached its absolute capacity. It had no remaining ability to absorb a single drop of water. What made this event so extraordinarily destructive, transcending typical winter storms, was the unusual, almost tropical warmth embedded within the storm system. The freezing level in the majestic Cascade and Olympic Mountains surged to an astonishing 7,000 to 8,000 feet, a shocking elevation for early December, more characteristic of a late spring thaw. Instead of snow piling up harmlessly in the high mountains, warm rain fell directly onto the existing, deep snowpack, melting it rapidly and adding millions upon millions of gallons of water to rivers already stressed to their breaking point. This rain-on snow event is a known flood accelerator, but its scale here was historic. Portland International Airport measured over 1.5 inches of rain in just 24 hours, while the Oregon Coast Range, a critical barrier, was forecast to receive up to 7 inches across the storm's duration. Crucially, the storm acted like a relentless conveyor belt, continuously pumping moisture inland. There were no breaks, no periods of relief, no chance for the overwhelming volume of water to drain before the next round hit. Meteorologists, in alarming but accurate terms, describe the setup as a fire hose of tropical moisture aimed directly at the northwest. With ground saturation at its absolute maximum, snowmelt accelerating rapidly, and multiple waves of rainfall still inbound, the region was positioned for exactly what followed. Rapid, devastating flooding, explosive river rises, widespread landslides, and a cascading crisis that would first hit Oregon with brutal force before pushing Washington into a full, alert emergency. The economic ripple effects of such an event, especially with the closure of I-5, cannot be overstated, impacting supply chains, local commerce, and the psychological fabric of communities. Oregon was the first state to experience the full, brutal force of this atmospheric river, and the transformation from mere heavy rain to full-scale, life-threatening flooding happened almost instantly, with a speed that caught many off guard. In just a few harrowing hours, Western Oregon's roads transmuted into fast-moving waterways, their usual traffic replaced by dangerous currents. Neighborhoods that typically experience only mild winter drizzle found themselves sitting in several feet of rapidly rising water, trapping residents and turning homes into isolated islands. The worst of it unfolded along Interstate 5, the major artery that connects the entire West Coast, a critical conduit for trade, commerce, and daily life. Entire sections of this highway vanished under brown, debris-filled floodwater, effectively severing a vital economic lifeline. Cars stalled within minutes, their engines drowning, drivers suddenly trapped with water surging around their doors. Firefighters rushed to the scene, but their traditional trucks were useless. Instead, they deployed inflatable rescue kayaks, paddling with desperate urgency between stranded vehicles, pulling people out through windows into the churning, cold water. One semi-truck, its cab rising defiantly above the flood, became a defining, harrowing image of the day water rising rapidly around it. The driver unable to escape until rescue teams, risking their own lives, fought their way through the relentless current. Eyewitnesses watched in horror as logs, fence posts, and even massive trash bins slammed into the truck, carried by the accelerating, unforgiving flow. Further south, coastal counties were hit even harder. Roads washed out entirely, transforming into impassable chasms, and rural communities found themselves suddenly cut off from the outside world. Emergency services issued stark warnings. Once roads disappeared, help might not be able to reach them for hours, or in some cases, at all. Urban infrastructure struggled just as acutely. In Portland, the massive Big Pipe overflow system, a multi-billion-dollar engineering marvel designed to handle millions of gallons of stormwater, was pushed past its capacity for the first time in an astonishing 393 days. The sheer volume of excess rainfall triggered a combined sewer overflow into the Willamette River, prompting contamination alerts across the entire metro area. A stark reminder of nature's power over even the most advanced human engineering. Cities like Salem, Tigard, Corvallis, and Gresham scrambled to distribute free sandbags as water crept inexorably toward homes in low-lying neighborhoods. Fire departments fielded non-stop calls about flooded basements, downed power lines, and massive trees collapsing across streets under the combined assault of saturated soil and strong winds. Meanwhile, major highways became chaotic, dangerous stretches of water. Cars hydroplaned across sheets of water. Visibility dropped to near zero, and drivers who attempted to push through flood zones quickly found themselves stranded, their vehicles becoming obstacles for overwhelmed emergency services. By early afternoon, Oregon looked like a patchwork of isolated towns, submerged cars, overwhelmed drainage systems, and exhausted rescue crews racing from one crisis to another, a state grappling with an environmental assault of epic proportions. And yet, meteorologists delivered the chilling warning that the storm was far from done. The next wave, equally potent, was already building offshore, ready to push the state deeper into an escalating disaster. If Oregon was overwhelmed, Washington found itself in a full-blown state of emergency, its infrastructure and communities under siege. As the second wave of the atmospheric river pushed deeper into the evergreen state, nearly every major river across western Washington surged past flood stage, transforming quiet valleys and fertile farmland into fast-moving, muddy lakes. The Snoqualmie, Skykomish, and Puyallup rivers, normally steady, predictable waterways crucial for agriculture and recreation, rose at alarming speeds. Water levels climbed so rapidly that traditional river gauges struggled to keep up, their digital readouts barely reflecting the true, terrifying pace of the inundation. Emergency alerts blared, warning that the Skagit River near Mount Vernon might surpass its historic 1990 record, threatening nearby levee systems and low-lying communities that rely on its placid nature. Residents watched helplessly as barns, fences, and thousands of acres of priceless farmland disappeared beneath expanding floodplains. A profound blow to the region's agricultural economy. At the iconic Snoqualmie Falls, the situation turned surreal. The waterfall roared at its highest volume since 2015, sending a colossal wall of water blasting over the cliffs, filling the gorge below with violent, white water rapids. Viral videos captured massive trees, complete with their intricate root systems and branches, hurtling downstream like wooden torpedoes, smashing into bridge supports and piling into dangerous debris dams that threatened further structural failures. Recognizing the unprecedented scale of the crisis, Governor Jay Inslee swiftly activated Washington's Emergency Operations Center at its highest level and mobilized the National Guard to assist with urgent evacuations and high water. Calls for help were non-stop. In Chehalis, a family of 6 was trapped overnight as 4 feet of water swallowed their access road, forcing rescue crews to use inflatable boats to reach them. Along Interstate 5, motorists found themselves stranded, the freeway itself morphing into a churning river. In Snohomish County, fire crews navigated boats past submerged cars and porches, pulling residents from second-story windows in desperate last-minute evacuations. Urban areas were hit just as hard. Downtown Seattle saw water pooling dangerously in intersections as storm drains, designed for less extreme conditions, became utterly overwhelmed. Hydroplaning accidents spread across the metro area, forcing police to close lanes and reroute traffic, snarling commutes and complicating rescue efforts. Businesses near the waterfront reported water seeping through doors as king tides, exacerbated by the storm, mixed with river flooding, a dangerous synergy. As if the flooding wasn't enough, The completely saturated soil of the Cascade foothills became dangerously unstable. Landslides began to collapse across Interstate 90 near North Bend, cutting off a major mountain pass crucial for east-west travel and commerce. State Road 106 in Mason County was obliterated, isolating dozens of homes. Several rural roads in Lewis, Skagit, and Snohomish counties simply vanished under tons of mud and debris. Entire communities such as Carnation, Sultan, and parts of the Skagit Valley were ordered to evacuate, their residents packing emergency bags, moving valuables upstairs, and watching river gauges obsessively as the water crept closer to their doors, a terrifying game of inches. Through all of this, meteorologists delivered the worst possible news. A second atmospheric river, equally warm and equally moisture-loaded, was forming offshore. That meant the little relief Washington had seen was agonizingly temporary. Rivers that had briefly stabilized were expected to rise again, possibly even higher, pushing past previous records. The Pacific Northwest wasn't dealing with a single, isolated disaster. It was fighting a rolling sequence of storms, each one worsening the damage of the last, with communities hanging on by a thread as the waters kept rising. This wasn't just a weather problem, it was a perfect storm of meteorology, geography, and timing, exacerbated by global climate trends that suggest such events will only become more frequent and intense. The true strength of Oregon and Washington, however, didn't come from the weather. It came from the people. In the face of rising water, collapsing roads, and disappearing escape routes, communities mobilized with an urgency, compassion, and determination that transcended the immediate crisis. Across both states, first responders worked without rest. Firefighters, sheriff's deputies, and National Guard teams moved through flooded neighborhoods in rescue boats, checking every car, every porch, every window for people who might be trapped. They navigated fast, moving currents filled with dangerous debris, tree branches, fencing, even entire logs, all while heavy rain continued to hammer down, a relentless assault on their endurance. In Chehalis, rescuers pulled a family of 6 from their home after 4 feet of water swallowed their driveway overnight. In Snohomish County, crews used inflatable kayaks to reach stranded drivers whose cars were nearly submerged, their faces a mixture of terror and relief. Along Interstate 5, rescuers waded into chest-deep water to help motorists escape vehicles being pushed by the powerful current, a testament to their unwavering dedication. Meanwhile, rural and farming communities fought their own unique battles. Livestock, integral to their livelihoods, had to be moved to higher ground before rivers overtook barns and fields, a race against the tide. County fairgrounds opened emergency stables to protect horses, cattle, and other animals. Farmers, utilizing their specialized equipment, used tractors as makeshift rescue vehicles, towing stranded cars and clearing paths through debris, embodying the spirit of self-reliance. And then there were the everyday heroes. Neighbors helping neighbors in ways that often go unseen during major disasters. People with lifted trucks made repeated trips through flooded intersections to ferry strangers to safety. Volunteers filled thousands of sandbags throughout the night, their hands raw, to reinforce levees and protect homes. Local businesses offered free meals, supplies, and charging stations for displaced families, providing a beacon of hope. Parents opened their homes to families who had fled with nothing more than a backpack. Teens, with remarkable ingenuity, used small boats or paddleboards to deliver water, blankets, or critical medication to trapped residents, showcasing the resilience of the youth. Emergency shelters across Oregon and Washington filled with evacuees. Families clutching pets, seniors wrapped in blankets, children wearing oversized rain boots, still wet from their harrowing evacuations. Volunteers provided warm meals, dry clothes, medical support, and a vital sense of stability amid the chaos. Even as meteorologists warned of a second, equally devastating surge of tropical moisture, communities refused to give up. They reinforced makeshift flood barriers, cleared blocked drainage ditches, monitored river gauges around the clock, and meticulously checked on the elderly and vulnerable. People shared updates online, warned neighbors in harm's way, and rallied together with a unity that disasters, paradoxically, often reveal. This event may have starkly shown the overwhelming power of nature, but it also unequivocally highlighted the resilience, heart, and courage of the Pacific Northwest. In the darkest moments, ordinary Americans rose up to protect one another, proving that even when the waters rise to unprecedented levels, the community rises higher. Moments like these remind us of something bigger than the immediate crisis. When nature shows its immense power, Americans show their heart. The flooding isn't over. The challenges of rebuilding, of adapting to a new climate reality, aren't over. But neither is the enduring resilience of the Pacific Northwest. And as more storms approach, staying informed and staying prepared has never been more critically important in a region grappling with a changing climate.